and time to go to the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois. Talk to Brad Biggs. Brad, what's up, man? Thanks for making time for us.
What's going on, boys?
We're doing well. Now, I know you wanted to talk a little Caps hockey, so we'll do it right off the top.
We'll get there eventually.
Oh, you want to get there. All right. Brad, let's talk about aggressive.
What about the Nationals? I was just down in Nationals camp last weekend, guys.
Were you really?
I told you he's a big Washington fan.
Did you like what you saw?
I'll tell you what. I was in the front row when James Wood hit that ball over the berm in left field, opposite field, just murdered it. I think he's looks fantastic this spring. Dylan Cruz looked really good. I am optimistic about the direction things are going for the Nationals.
I love to hear that. Now, besides being our Nationals correspondent, Brad Biggs also covers the Bears for the Chicago Tribune. You can give him a follow at Brad Biggs, but he's a DMV native. Do I remember right? I want to say Herndon. I know it's Northern Virginia.
No. Jeb Stewart High School.
That has definitely been renamed. I don't know what it is now, but I bet it's not that anymore.
Well, I got a letter jacket somewhere buried in some closet, and it says Stewart on it. So
there you go.
I don't know what to tell you.
Falls Church.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so let's talk about the Bears. It's been an aggressive free agency in Chicago and trades as well. Clearly, they're trying to rebuild an offensive line for Caleb Williams. How do you feel these moves have gone so far?
Well, they wanted to have a better pocket, right? They believe in kind of having a firm pocket, giving that quarterback an opportunity to step up in the pocket and avoid some of the heat coming from the edges. And boy, they've done that. You talk about trading for Joe Tooney, who's got 4 Super Bowl rings, more than most any man walking the planet these days. Jonah Jackson will start for him, who played for the new head coach Ben Johnson previously in Detroit. Had a kind of a disastrous season this past year for the Rams after being one of the prizes in free agency at this time a year ago. And then signing Drew Dahlman, who was clearly the top center on the market from the Falcons in free agency. So they're going to be brand new from guard to guard, and it remains to be seen what the left tackle plan will be. And certainly the Commanders did a great job of being able to trade for Laramie Tunsil and getting a guy that's still at the top of his game to protect for Jaden Daniels. But that's something that potentially the Bears could address via the draft with the 10th overall pick.
Brett, a lot of it, people talk about how Caleb liked to ad-lib a lot. And you can see in games last year, he'll drop back, there will be a pocket, but he starts to scramble. How much of that can Ben Johnson get out of him so he can help if they form a pocket there for him?
Yeah, I think they've got to work together on that. And you got a lot of stuff's going to go into that. Number one, the protection. So if the quarterback feels more comfortable with the consistency of what he's going to get out of his offensive line, he's going to be more inclined to trust the play, to hang in there. Johnson, it was a timing and rhythm-based passing offense in Detroit with Jared Goff. And you can't drop the same offense in here with the Bears roster. You don't have the same players, but I think some of the basic principles that you have, you can attempt to apply. And so they're going to hope that Caleb can play at a higher level within the structure of the offense and more consistently, while also using those special abilities he has for second reaction plays when he leaves the pocket, when protection breaks down, to make the big play. That now you can't make a living doing that in the National Football League, but boy, that you guys saw it with Jaden. You guys have seen it before. I mean, those can be backbreaking plays for the defense when the rush is there, the quarterback is able to avoid it. The coverage downfield can't hold up, And all of a sudden, what started as looking like a great play for the defense turns into an 18-yard gain, into a 30-yard gain, absolute backbreakers. So they just need him to be more consistent down to down, and by improving the offensive line, they feel like they've taken a step in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. It's really going to be interesting to see how Caleb progresses. We're talking with Brad Biggs from the Chicago Tribune, covers the Chicago Bears here on the Rude Guest Hotline. Rude makes the most reliable heating and air conditioning products in the DMV. With Caleb, last year I think is better than a lot of folks realized, but the ugly stuff was certainly ugly. How is the vibe different now with Ben Johnson there? Finally, an offensive coach to try to help a young quarterback get developed. Just how different does it seem?
I think that if you talk to the fan base, they're really enthusiastic. That Lions offense wasn't a flash in the pan last season. Like, that has been an electric offense for what 2.5, 3 seasons now.
Yeah.
In terms of production. I'm talking about touchdowns, yardage, first down, and doing it every which way, running the ball, throwing it, creativity. So I think it's brought some energy to the fan base. I know it's brought some energy to the locker room, and they've got to close some ground. Like, you look at the rookie quarterbacks last year, and Jaden Daniels was head and shoulders above the other players in that class. You don't define a career trajectory with a rookie season, right? When you're drafting a quarterback that high, I think you're looking at a 5-6 year window to start with. What does he look like then? How has he led his team? What kind of success has the team had? What's the postseason picture look like for the team over an extended period of time? And so Caleb's got some ground to close. They feel like they got the hottest coach in this hiring cycle, and no question the Commanders did a phenomenal job in hiring Dan Quinn and the staff he assembled a year ago, and the Bears are hoping that they're not too far behind with what Ben Johnson's going to be able to bring to the organization.
What's that main thing there, or one thing you think Ben will bring to the organization that can help them out that the previous coach didn't have?
Yeah, I think maybe accountability and kind of toughness with the players. Ben Johnson, and talking to people in his background, and I spent an inordinate amount of time doing that in January and the beginning of February. Like, he's got some real toughness to him, and I think that might be a good thing for Caleb and a lot of other players in that locker room. And he can be very demanding, but people say he's also has the ability to show empathy, and so he's going to support them and push them, and that's what they need, because it was probably, I'm not trying to make it sound like it was in good shape a year ago, but their roster was better than a 5-12 team. Like, they shouldn't have lost 10 games in a row. So that's hard to do in the NFL. Like, you talk about how difficult it is to go on a 10-game winning streak, and it's extremely difficult to do that, right? It's similarly hard to lose that many weeks in a row in the National Football League, and they pulled it off. Longest losing streak in franchise history. Wow. And he's here now to instill, I think, some accountability in that locker room from the top down.
Well, it's crazy because how much I don't know enough about the Bears organization, right? But I just know, as an outsider looking in, they've had this consistent pattern of coach gets hired, then a GM gets hired, so those two aren't on the same wavelength. Then they draft a quarterback, then the coach gets blown out, then eventually the GM gets blown out. The biggest difference in Washington last year is that For the first time, I mean, honestly, since Jack Kent Cook owned the team, you had complete organizational alignment from owner to GM to coach to selecting a quarterback and then everybody pushing in the same direction. That, to me, has been absent in Chicago.
It's huge. No question. Like, they've done things out of order.
Right.
They've picked the wrong quarterback forever.
Right.
I mean, it's laughable. The Chicago Bears invented the forward pass in the 1930s. Okay, and so they were evolutionary in the game of professional football, and they sort of stopped after Sid Luckman hung up the cleats in 1950 or whatever it was, and that was a long time ago. So they need to be a heck of a lot better. Ben Johnson's got a lot of challenges ahead of him. He hasn't been here long enough to even understand all of the challenges that he's going to face as a first-time head coach. Guys, their schedule's really tough this year, especially with some of these road games. They'll be at Washington. They're at Philly. I think they're at Baltimore. They drew the NFC East and the AFC North. So it's going to be a gauntlet for them, but they've got energy now. They've got some solid draft capital. I mentioned earlier they're picking 10th. Then they pick again at 39 and 41. So you talk about having 3 selections in the first 1.5 rounds, and they've got an opportunity to bring in some more young talent that ought to be able to help them out sooner rather than later if they get the right guys.
Do you see the maturity that's going to be needed from Caleb coming into him? Because you can see sometimes he get a little frustrated, but I think any rookie gets frustrated. But at a quarterback position, you got to be a little different.
Yeah, I think that's an unknown for this year. Like it's going to take a lot of work, and maybe more than he was accustomed to during his rookie season. So. How does he handle the challenges that are going to be in front of him? Like it's not a show up at 6:30 in the morning and leave at 5 p.m. Like you got to be doing some film work on your own at home. Probably you got to be you got to get dialed in. You got to have a mastery of what they want to do offensively, so you can build off the basics. Like they're not going to throw everything at them in the first 3 months, right? And I think that's one of the errors they admitted to making last year. Is they kind of went over some stuff with Caleb. Maybe they didn't have everything down like they needed to be, and I'm not saying that he struggled learning or anything of that nature, but they just kind of moved along before they probably should have in a lot of areas, and so that created some challenges for him in a rookie season that had some ups and downs. He did a really nice job of protecting the football. I was extremely impressed by his toughness and durability. To take a league high 68 sacks and not miss any time and not complain about it. Like team first guy. So I'm interested to see what year 2 looks like because, like I said earlier, he's got some ground he needs to gain so it doesn't look obtuse in the near future. Like, hey, can you believe what Washington was able to get with the second pick and what the Bears ended up getting with the first pick? Like Caleb needs to close the gap here.
Talking with our friend Brad Biggs here on the Rude Guest Hotline. Rude makes the best HVAC products in the DMV. One thing that's been really hard to kind of pencil in is how much of a difference that O-line is going to make. They clearly invested heavy there. Do you think you mentioned kind of the stuff with Jonah? I always have pause when Andy Reid is trading away a veteran player.
Oh
yeah. I'm curious, kind of, if you think that's the right fix. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, like I had a buddy of mine reach out shortly after those 2 moves went down, and he's like, can you believe this? Is this going to work? And I said, well, so what are the parlay odds on the Bears outfoxing the Rams front office and the Chiefs front office on consecutive days. Like those are long odds, right? I mean, the Rams have done things pretty well under Les Snead and Sean McVay. And you know what the Rams are probably better at than almost any team in the league, guys? When they make a mistake, they just say, okay, no problem. They move on.
Yeah.
They move on. They're like, yep, we brought this guy in, it didn't work, and we're moving on. And to your point with the Chiefs, Trey Smith would have been he would have been the highest paid guy in free agency, and he made it to the market to guard for the Chiefs, and they decided to keep him and invest in him, and with the tight cap space that made Tooney available. I believe Tooney's still playing at a very high level, certainly as a pass protector. As much football as he's played, maybe he's not quite the same now going into year 10 as he was earlier in his career as a run blocker, but I still think he's playing at a very high level. I think he'll be really good for their locker room because of his experiences. I mean, this is a guy he's played for two quarterbacks. He's played for Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Jonah Jackson, if you like the hire of Ben Johnson as a Bears coach, you give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, he is going to be able to tell the front office, this is what Jonah's going to bring on the field, and this is what he's going to be in the locker room. Like, because they were with the Lions for such a long period of time. Like, last year was the only year Jackson played for the LA Rams. Previously, he was with the Lions. So I give the coach the benefit of the doubt there. I think Tooney's still at a high level, but they're sort of short-term fixes, right? And they're expensive fixes, but they were badly needed. Like, the Bears were completely inadequate from guard to guard this past season, and that's no way to indoctrinate a rookie quarterback into the National Football League.
All right, Brad, last one from me. B might have more. Talking with our friend Brad Biggs, covers the Bears, DC native. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we've all made our guess. What game, when do you think Ovi breaks Gretzky's record?
That was going to be my
question. Man. Is tonight a possibility against the Canes?
He'd have to score 9.
He got to score 9 of the night.
I'll be honest. When the season started, I looked at the roster, and I'm like, if Ovechkin scores every night, I'm good with whatever the record is. And then as you saw how they played and kind of responded to the coach, like, holy, I might be able to have my cake and eat it here, right? like Ovi's scoring, and they're just winning. Like, it is, it's been kind of magical. But for him to be able to lock it up before the end of the season, I think would be great, because then it's a non-story then when the playoffs start, right? Like, you don't talk about him ending up a 2 goals shy or a goal shy or anything like that. It's just so remarkable, and I'll tell you what, I know locally people understand it and talk about it, but nationally, like, you look at the lockout season, you look at COVID, and you consider how many games in his prime that he missed and didn't have an opportunity to play, and realize where the number would be at if those situations wouldn't have popped up. And it's even more impressive.
Well, dude, I also think with the Ovi chase garnering the attention, right? Meanwhile, the Caps are just a buzzsaw.
Yeah, they scored 7 the other night. He didn't even score.
It's a wagon.
I think in years past, where they've had all of this kind of pressure of being the 1 seed in the East, maybe they win President's Cup. We'll see what happens with Winnipeg. But like all of this pressure isn't there right now because everybody's focused on Ovi getting the goals. Yeah. I think that could be powerful going into the playoffs.
Right. And they've got, I don't know. I mean, you guys have got listeners that are way more educated about the game than I am, but it seems like they've got all these young guys that are in the pipeline now too, which is just, I mean, it's really kind of amazing. So hopefully the Nats get off to a decent start and they're entertaining, and you see some young guys step forward and you watch the Caps go into the playoffs. It could be an entertaining spring, because, guys, the Bullets have stunk since I was like in 7th grade, and I haven't been able to follow the NBA since.
Some bad news for the Whiz Kids just emerged right now. Bilal Coulibaly done for the season. He took a really tough fall the other night. They said it was a hamstring thing. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. That season doesn't have that much more time.
I mean, there's no chance they win the lottery, right? I mean, they've been cursed forever.
The only reason they're going to have the most ping pong balls.
They have most ping pong balls, yeah.
But, as Kornheiser always used to write, curse of Le Boulay. So we'll see what happens, man. But there's good stuff. Commanders, Caps, a lot of good college hoops right now. The DMV's alive and well, Brad. We missed you.
All right, Brad.
All right, guys. You have a great day. Thanks for having me on today.
All right,
Thanks for coming on, man.
Take care.
Brad Biggs, give him a follow at Brad Biggs on social. Does a hell of a job covering the Bears, and I love that he's still just a DMV fan
He's
at its core.
Nut by DMV Sports.